Welcome back to the MyLatinLife podcast. Since 2014, MyLatinLife has been your trusted guide to traveling and living in Latin America. Our guest today is Kent Halliburton from Saz Mining, or do you say Saz Mining? Kent, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Let's kick us off with the pronunciation.
Yeah, so Kent Halliburton, last name's Halliburton, but company is called Saz Mining. We do Bitcoin mining as a service. So first company to bring software as a service to Bitcoin mining.
So we first got connected through Leon, who's a previous podcast guest from BitVault, who was on quite recently. And he said, you got to have Kent on. And I'm starting to get why. You've been an expat for a long time, a little Latin America, a little Portugal. You're American and you've been kind of running this international business. Of course, a lot of our audience is interested in Bitcoin, in crypto mining as well. So lots of different trees we could bark up on this podcast. But I guess I'm curious kind of what is the state of mining right now? You know, maybe some people will say like the golden years are behind us or something like that. Or where are things kind of at with mining?
Yeah, actually, time has never been better. And it's a common misconception. One I held myself, I got into Bitcoin in late 2015. And I instantly thought, reading online that mining was not accessible. And I held that view until about 2020 when I picked up a copy of Jeff Booth's The Price of Tomorrow and read. My background is in rooftop solar, where I worked for about a decade before taking a sabbatical and living a nomadic stint and then getting into Bitcoin mining. But read this book and I was just like, oh, what have I been thinking? Mining is, of course, accessible. Here's this industry that's going to go through 2140. The problem is the tooling isn't there to make it accessible. And so that's part of what I'm working to remedy.
Okay. And I guess, could you elaborate a bit more on that? Like what makes now the best time or the better time than ever before to get into mining?
So stability, I would say. So it's been this really interesting thing. So Bitcoin mining is, first of all, it mystifies a lot of people. It's a 0 to 1 innovation. Bitcoin itself is actually two unique innovations. If you've looked at much at educational material around Bitcoin, the thing that's most focused on is actually the decentralized ledger, this uncensorable ledger that you can transfer value on around the world. But that's one part. The other part is a decentralized money printer. Anybody that's got the right hardware and electricity to power that hardware can print Bitcoin. And that is a very novel thing since money printing has been centralized for quite some time now. So the power for anybody to print Bitcoin is unique. And if you look at the tooling around that, largely it's been self-mining that people have done. But there's not been many folks that have showed up and said, look, let's make this accessible and and sell the picks and the shovels instead. That way we can onboard people into it. So the stability of the price this last cycle, largely by institutional adoption, means that the two sides of this ledger, price, or the two sides of this innovation, price on one side and computational power on the other side, have largely been in lockstep. And so that's made returns pretty much flat and neutral and removed a lot of the volatility from the opportunity.
Okay. And this is still something that there's opportunity at the individual level, or is it really at the point where you got to have, like a commercial level mining operation to make it economically feasible?
So your question is accurate up until about 2 to 3 years ago when we arrived on the scene, because we were the first to sort of democratize that access through a software as a service platform. So specifically, we brought it down to an individual mining rig level. So what we do as a company is we go contract a data center. And right now we've got one in Wisconsin, one in Paraguay, Norway, and Ethiopia at the moment. So we look for the low cost power and the low cost data center and a great quality operator that we can trust. We contract them and then we fill the rack space there at that data center with our customers' equipment. And then we manage that entire relationship. And so we make money through a property management fee instead of taking a markup on the electricity or the hardware to get our clients set up. So it's our clients' hardware, it's their mining rigs, it's their Bitcoin, and we're just a custodian of that process for them.
So for the audience listening to this and Saz Mining, like what is the opportunity there for them? What message do you want to get out to people?
The primary message is, look, mining is a better way to acquire Bitcoin. Full stop. Right? Like you've been trained to think that, okay, I'm going to go to an exchange and I'm going to acquire Bitcoin. But there's hidden risks to acquire your Bitcoin exchange. The biggest one is the surveillance attached to your Bitcoin.
Mm,
But it's also a higher cost to purchase on the secondary market exchanges than it is to mine a source. So you've got lower cost, you've got wild sats or fractions of a Bitcoin in the network, a third party. And the third thing is it actually unlocks more of the market in general. So if you've been scared of acquiring Bitcoin, its volatility, this actually removes it. The point of purchase volatility is it keeps people from Bitcoin. So even though they can see that the compound growth rates of Bitcoin are 80% last I checked for the last 5 years, you can take part in that and still be scared of the volatility of purchasing it on exchange because nobody wants to purchase to make them feel stupid. The price drops percent, and that risk actually keeps a lot of people away. So this actually makes Bitcoin accessible. You purchase a piece of hardware, and it's just streaming out fractions of a Bitcoin in your wallet.
hmm So what does someone need to like um what is the profile of a person that would be successful with this? Do they need to be living in a low cost of energy area or what's the deal there?
I know. So we've outsourced. We've taken care of the entire operation. It's just a financial obligation. So you pay for your hardware. We get the mining rig set up, deployed. You provide us a Bitcoin address and a means to pay your electric. The Bitcoin's yours. We're just managing. So you don't need to do anything at your home. This is all a outsourced software as a
Okay, it's
service
like in
opportunity.
the data center in Paraguay or Ethiopia or
Hmm.
whatever. So I'm
Yeah,
buying an allocation of hardware and energy and kind of the full shebang in Paraguay.
you're buying a mining rig, complete with serial number, and all the data is coming directly from the mining rig. So it's kind of like buying a server from AWS.
hmm Okay, cool. Um, this is interesting. I do have people. I don't know if you know Travis from Bitcoin Capitalist. He's been down in
Mm.
Paraguay, but I think he does some of this as well. I haven't talked to him about it. He was on the podcast recently, but we didn't get to the mining stuff too much. But I'm pretty sure it's similar. So what do the economics of this look like? Maybe this sounds too much like a commercial for the audience, but I'm just genuinely curious, like kind of how the economics of this look like.
Yeah, so I don't have. I know the economics for Ethiopia right now because our Paraguay data center is pretty much completely allocated.
Okay.
But we are mining in Iguazu Falls, and so the reason why we're in Paraguay is very similar to why we're in Ethiopia. And so I know you're a Paraguayan resident. It's fun to talk about that a little. The grid and what makes most of the power there is the Itapu waterfall or
hmm
dam. It's like
hmm
a 14 gigawatt dam, and
hmm
half of that goes to Brazil and half to Paraguay. Well, that's 7 gigawatts for those doing math at home. And the country of Paraguay, last I looked, was using about 4 gigawatts of power. So that gap, that 3 gigawatts worth of power gap, they've been selling at a loss to Brazil until the mining community showed because
hmm
it's a portable opportunity to help sop up that electricity and export Bitcoin. So that's really the opportunity that's similar in Ethiopia. They have a brand new massive hydro dam as part of an IMF project, I believe. I'm not 100% certain on that, but it's a massive project damming up the Nile in Ethiopia. And they have a ton of excess power. And Bitcoin miners can come in and help monetize that and increase the GDP. So, what does that look like as an individual? Right now, if you set aside the hardware side of things, just look at what do I generate in Bitcoin on a monthly basis and how much does that cost me? That leads to an energy cost of your Bitcoin, 50,000. So it is about 50% off the price of exchanges. All
Wow.
those Bitcoin are sent, directly from the network to your wallet, right? So there's no intermediary. It comes from the money. your wallet. Um, and then the if you look at it from the hardware standpoint, you do need to purchase your ticket to get on the ride, so to speak, which is your mining
Hmm.
rig, and you can sell that at the end of the ride. But just everything being equal, generally speaking, the hardware again, we've seen a fairly stable environment in the last couple of years.
Hmm.
But in general, what you see is your inflection point where you've saved more than you've spent.
Okay, so it's about takes about 2 years to hit profitability or recoup the cost of the hardware. Is that what
Well,
you're
I
saying?
kind of. I mean, there's a weird dynamic with Bitcoin mining because Bitcoin mining is the only way to generate Bitcoin, just full
Hmm.
stop, right? And that's a zero situation. That means that as opposed to we're used to and we're trained to naturally think, okay, dollars in, dollars out, right? That's how we think. Well, here's this thing that's actually creating a different form of money called Bitcoin. So it's dollars in, Bitcoin out. How do you evaluate that? And that's why I tend to bring it back to the price of the savings. So if you look at the savings you receive from acquiring your Bitcoin from energy instead of purchasing off an exchange, then yeah, that savings justifies it.
Okay. And how much money does someone need to get started?
In Ethiopia, it's about 7,000. It's 6,000 on one, 9,000 on another. So it depends on if you want to get the best bang for your buck right now or the most Bitcoin. There's kind of a break in set there. Like I want the most Bitcoin no matter what it costs me. That's the $9,000 mining rig, and then the best value mining. Okay.
Okay, cool. So not too bad.
No, no, it's affordable and it's just a smart way to stack if you've been acquiring Bitcoin off of an exchange and whole process and you just have something in the background. You'll find is that this is actually a better approach to acquiring. Yeah, you've still got the counterparty risk of us, but we've got performance guarantees to stop alignment of incentives. Basically means that because I don't make money selling you hardware or electricity, I only make money if I'm generating. If you're generating Bitcoin, it means that I'm making the decisions, property and equipment.
Mm. Okay, cool. You mentioned offline that you wanted to share a little bit about your Bitcoin origin story and how you got orange pilled. Do you want to share a bit about that?
Well, I think it's something that you mentioned. Your audience is kind of digital nomads. I think it was an early digital nomad before that term came about. So I did computer engineering on the central coast of California, directly into rooftop solar, where I worked for about a decade. And at the top of my game, I had way too much pressure, nine-figure revenue targets, publicly traded company, and I decided it was a good time when they brought a new CEO in to just throw in a and travel.
Mhm.
So I lived the life nomadic from 16, and during that process, I saw upwards of 30 countries, and had a fantastic time. Experiences that'll last a lifetime. But I bumped into both a Portuguese woman that I fell in love with and Bitcoin, both in Peru, of all places. And I wound up relocating my life into Portugal, where I lived the American dream abroad, both
Mhm.
entrepreneurship with Bitcoin and house, family, marriage, the whole bit. And my wife's work eventually brought us to Peru about 4 years ago. So I've lived quite an extensive life outside the U.S. at this point. I know you have many, but living now in Peru, speaking Spanish, Portuguese, English, living off of a business that is centric really has me realizing how fragile and not even fragile, but just how transparent the world really is changing. I don't really understand into. I don't know that anybody does, but I think having the flexibility of having a sovereign money, sovereign in general, but sports and being flexible is quite a.
Okay, cool. Are you liking Peru?
I am. I don't know that I would have liked Peru directly after leaving the U.S., but I think that the 6 years spent in
It's
Portugal.
a little raw.
Yeah, it is. It's a little raw, but I also grew up on a farm on the West Coast, and so there's something that I like about the simplicity. But for instance, like I'm working out of my office right now, right? And my Amazon, it's outside of a city of a couple, and so I'm close to an airport. Work life is not hard, but I basically had to either be in the noisy tin roofed city, or I needed to build a house with my own air conditioner so I could. So it's nice to have air.
So you built your own house
Well, not me personally, but oversaw. Yeah, we built a.
in the Amazon.
Yeah,
Where so there's like Iquitos and stuff. Where are you at? Do you say?
I try not to be fair, but it's south of Iquitos.
Okay. Wow. And is your wife in like the like an aid worker or something, or like something government related like that, like the UN or
A
something?
therapist. So yeah, there's a specialty clinic here that treats drug addiction. An NGO that's 35 years, and that's why we pursue her calling.
Wow, that's crazy. Um, Portugal to Peru, definitely a lot in common, but I mean, yeah, even the Amazon is something else.
It's a separate reality. I it took me a few years of being in Peru before I realized, holy cow, the Amazon is the green ocean. It is, in my opinion, it is the frontier these days, the analog frontier, and all the cities that are around the Amazon are port cities
Hmm.
because the Amazon itself is completely. You mentioned Iquitos, right? And for your viewers that do not know, Iquitos is the largest city, population of 1 million, that has no road, right? So you can get there by plane, or but that's it. And you visit that city and you realize just how wide the Amazon. You can go sit and have a coffee and watch like logs and oil, gold mining derricks down the river. It's all.
Hmm.
It is what it is. It's there is a lawless contingent there.
So you haven't got malaria or typhoid or anything yet? Dengue? Been Did the
No,
bugs like you or
thankfully,
not?
no, no. I mean, living in it's the high Amazon, right? So this is where the Amazon meets the Andes. So it's a couple hundred
Hmm.
meters of elevation, and that makes a lot of difference.
Hmm.
The bug load is lower. There's still a lot of insects, and I will say, if you decide to come to the have to, especially.
Wow, that's incredible. And did so? You know what happened recently was Peru switched their citizenship uh, timeline from 2 years of residency to 5 years of residency. Did you sneak in before that? Did you put in, or was that on your radar at all?
I did not know until you just said that, and I don't know what the rules of the regulations are for me. So I'm a resident, but I'm a resident because child here, not
Okay.
intentionally, but my wife, shortly before we left Portugal, became pregnant, and we were moving here anyway, and so having our child, our second child here, in Peru, and that enabled us to become resident. We
No, that's cool. Yeah, they changed it just this year, in terms of from a 2 year to a 5 year path to citizenship.
hmm,
I could I could double check. Sometimes it's a faster timeline to citizenship if you have a child in the country. Usually, like a lot of countries have provisions for that where there's an accelerated timeline. But Peru was always famously one of the only countries in the world where you could get citizenship after 2 years of residency, and they just changed that this year, kind of to combat all the Venezuelans and stuff that had
hmm.
come down. So that's kind of where I was coming from. I wasn't sure if you Uh, I think like a lot of people aren't
Cool.
even. I figured you might be interested in some of this stuff, like having multiple passports and everything.
Well, yeah, no, actually, I'd be keen to actually ask you a couple of questions. You probably know than I do here because I haven't checked into it. Child was born. We need to get residency, so she's born. So at some point last year, we got our residency. So it was definitely 2024. But it seems to me, Peru is definitely a rising country, an ascending country. You
Hmm.
can just see it with the construction, new airport, new seaport going in, great food, it's attracting quite a few folks. It's still sort of undiscovered from an American perspective, but what I'm curious about, because I'm an American, I've got a Portuguese passport, do I have any risks or implications if I get a Peruvian passport as well?
No, no. Certainly
Interesting.
not with the U.S. Maybe with Portugal. They are changing the nationality law right now, but typically not. Typically not. So it should be fine.
Yeah, I
How
wouldn't
was
think a Peruvian passport actually enables anything American, Portuguese. You never know how things change.
Well, it does in a lot of ways, actually, because it's part of the Mercosur as well as the Andean community. So you
Hmm.
basically, once you have a Peruvian passport, you have the right to live and work anywhere in South America.
Oh,
And
really?
so you can get up and move to Brazil or Argentina or Paraguay or pretty
Hmm.
much anywhere else. So they have sort of settlement rights. Um, so it's almost like a mini EU in that sense. Obviously, it's not as fluid of borders, but it's kind of a similar concept.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, good to know.
So I guess your child, as they grow up, they could basically go to school or work anywhere in South America. Um,
Yeah, yeah, that's true. And we still have one more passport yet but that's really interesting. Cool.
mhm.
Thanks for.
And then even like maybe Peru has visa-free Russia, where the U.S. and European passports don't, or certain benefits in like other non-Western aligned countries, that kind of thing. It might even be part of the APEC. You can get the APEC travel card, Peruvian passport. Is Peru part of it?
Man, you get me amped to work in citizenship.
Yeah, Peru is a full member of APEC, the APEC, and you can get this sort of business travel card that gives you like visa-free China and a bunch of other stuff, which is
Hmm.
a pretty cool thing that not a lot of people know about. We made a YouTube video about it recently. But yeah, I think that's kind of what you want is like the trifecta of a passport in all three continents, right? Like North America, South America, and Europe.
Yeah, it's funny how my life is just not, but yeah, it does feel somewhat serendipitous to be able to have that. Like I didn't realize that Peru was Russian. Both.
Hmm. How was getting that Portugal passport for you? Because it's a country that's just famous for like huge delays in terms of it's like one thing is meeting the requirements and being entitled to apply, and then another thing is like the wait and actually getting your citizenship certificate. So how was that for you?
Horrible. Genuinely. Yeah, I got my application in. So by marriage, at least at the time, it changed, but through marriage, my wife's Portuguese. I could apply after living there for years, and so at the end of the year, I applied. I actually may have applied, and the application process me a year to figure out that they were stuck with something. I hired a lawyer to help me stuck it, and then it was like so. Yeah, it was a hallelujah when I
Mm. And via marriage, did you have to do any like civics test or language test or anything?
So again, completely dumb luck. You know, here I just meet this woman I'm traveling. I'm like, oh, you're amazing. You're in Portugal. Realize how amazing Portugal is. Start off our life there. Oh, okay, I can become a citizen. Oh, by marriage, okay, and I better do that. It'd be great to have an.
And that's kind of where Saz Mining started, I think, right? Or you were living in Portugal at the time that you started the business?
Co-founded the business there. Yeah, so the founder, he had actually started it in 2018, and there was a bit of a wander through the wilderness to figure out what SaaS was, but along the way built the I stepped in while I was living in Portugal and capital.
And tell me about some of those deals that you negotiated. It must be fun kind of going around the world, going to Norway and Ethiopia and stuff and setting up these facilities. Were you involved in that side of things?
Yeah, very much so. So a decade in rooftop solar, negotiating contracts, deals, is part of the skill set. And so very hands. At the end of the day, who we contract for a data center, we're putting the trust that we have with our clients to large our own staff or contract on the ground to be able to deal with the maintenance and care facilities. So I go with bread with all of our operators, go to all the sites. Just that again, engineering plus construction background,
Hmm.
the assessments. And it's more than just that site visit. Quite a bit of other due diligence before making that trip. But yeah, it was a very exotic trip to check out the the data center in the Arctic Circle. It's a heat region. What that means is it's a renovated hospital now turned into a hospital from mid 1900s. The a business center, and it's north of the Arctic Circle. It's called Kirkenes, and there was a boiler system there, oil boiler was heating the facility, and so our partner and swapped that out for a Bitcoin mining data center, extracting the heat generated to heat the building throughout the instead of the oil boiler. It's a pretty cool like two for situation. You get not only the Bitcoin but also quite low cost of electricity, heat. But that trip, just the timing of it was very odd with a personal obligation I had, and I wound up leaving from the high Amazon and Arctic Circle hours
Hmm.
and making it back an hours later. So it was probably the
Jeez, because you definitely needed some boots, some gloves, all that stuff.
yeah, to go from I'm barefoot and in shorts mostly to needing down equipment to be up there. It was pretty wild.
Wow. And do you find that the like the governments and the places that you go that they kind of get it, or is there an education process when it comes to creating these contracts and just like getting the government buy-in there?
I So this is actually touches on something that's really interesting. So Bitcoin mining really mystifies people. I think I mentioned that earlier. And what I've realized is part of the process. So to answer to your question, there has to be education. But what I've realized about Bitcoin mining is because it mystifies our default as a species is to be scared of unknown. And what I've seen over and over again in countries, there's savvy politicians that latch on to that fear of the unknown with Bitcoin and will turn Bitcoin mining. It really isn't. But if you just listen to popular narratives, you're destroying the planet, boiling, all the electricity. fundamentally true, but it unfortunately is power in nations. So there's like for every nation that I've seen that has accepting mining, it's almost like grudgingly as like, oh, you're actually helping. All right, the flesh for help fill the tax revenue, but we'll pretend that we're not totally appreciated at this point, even though we do something quite extraordinary, is have the ability to basically shut off, which no other manufacturer. So Bitcoin mining, I they kind of jumped the shark there. Bitcoin mining, I think, process
Mhm.
it's just happened very very fast, that manufacturing process, which means that you can shut it down and the power that it's harnessing the grid, and that's incredibly powerful feature. And not even battery. The combination of mining plus batteries, renewables is actually the grid across the.
Could you explain that a little bit? How Bitcoin mining helps the grid?
Yeah, it helps the grid because well, let me explain something about the two things about the grid that a lot of people don't know, and it's kind of demystifies the grid itself. So, first of all, electricity is not like you use it or you lose it. It's a flow. As soon as that flow is got too much power in it, it's got to go to ground. So what that means is when you generate power, if the power is not consumed when it's generated, it either has to be stored in batteries or locked, right? So you're not saving electricity per se just by using less electricity. That electricity still has to go somewhere. If enough of us save electricity, sure, they're going to take off some power generation itself. But that's what the grid operator is doing, is constantly managing how much power do we have coming into the grid from all these various points, how much power do we have consumed and being consumed, and they're constantly trying to manage it in real time. It's how a grid functions, right? So that on-demand aspect of the grid unique. But Bitcoin mining, where it really helps out, is two things. So first of all, Bitcoin mining's biggest expense is electricity.
Mhm.
That means that by definition, a Bitcoin miner wants the cheapest electricity you can find. Well, what's the cheapest electricity you can find? Is that's the electricity nobody wants. Why don't they want it? Because it's either produced at the wrong time or the wrong place or a combination of both. And if you look at what energy sources are doing that, often it's making too much power when the sun's in the middle of the day and not enough at night. Winds blowing, so we've got wind electricity, hydro in this location, but it's a long way away from the city, right? And so this is where Bitcoin mining can actually fill the gap. It's portable; it can go anywhere. It just needs an internet connection tied to that electricity. So especially with Starlink today, it really unlocks Bitcoin mining in a spectacular way. Having a connection like that, so it just needs internet connection. It doesn't need like a perfect either. So it's not like AI that huge data pipe to make it work. So
Mhm.
it can consume and harness that electricity. And then the second feature that we got is that it can turn off on. So when you look at demand response, that's what they call this. So you're a grid operator, you're trying to manage that input of power versus the power that's being extracted and trying to manage it all. Well, holy cow, there was a thunderstorm and it knocked off a dam over here. I need to free up some power to keep up with all the consumption. How do I do that quickly? Well, you have to have somebody else that's to shut off. And there's contracts for response. Now, there's nothing besides Bitcoin to turn off and quit. Every other manufacturing process lines up for response. It's a long shutdown process. So as a result, uh, this actually makes grid management much easier. So, for instance, Texas right now, they have the biggest grid that I'm aware of on the planet. It is the biggest. It's called ERCOT. They are structuring all of this through price. So when there's too much power, utilities pricing, the price starts to spike. Response, different operators take that up and their equipment, money by shutting their equipment. It's cheaper for the grid operator to pay these guys to shut down their equipment, to sell them power. The other. So I'm sorry if I get too technical and too confusing. The simple thing is Bitcoin mining is portable, consume power anywhere,
Mhm.
and two, Bitcoin mining can turn off on time. Those characteristics are super grid operated.
Mm, definitely makes sense. And what is this acronym DCA? What does that stand for?
Dollar cost average. So it's kind of a
Okay.
common acronym
Right.
in our because it's a way to avoid the price volatility.
Okay. Okay. I thought it was like a different acronym with a mining angle to it. Okay, gotcha. And what's it like running this type of business from Peru where none of your operations are local in Peru, so you're managing stuff kind of all over the world remotely. I guess that's the beauty of Bitcoin is it is a pretty remote first industry.
Yeah, it's exactly what I was going to say. Is I think of Bitcoin as supernatural and national, right? Supranational mind because it's beyond nation state borders, and I'm just lucky to have found it to be able to build a business off of it. I mean, there are certain struggles to working remotely, um, but I've also just worked remotely since I joined the workforce in 2005. I've always had a home. I worked first in sales and did in-home site appointments, and no need for at that point. So I'm not very comfortable in an office environment. So I don't know if I would be able to fit into one. So it works out great for me and my lifestyle, and fits with Bitcoin. But yeah, it's unique. Very very fortunate.
That's cool. Yeah, I don't think anyone feels comfortable in an office. It's just something we've been sort of forced to do.
I do. Yeah, it's true. It's true. Like all the harsh lights, the cubicles. I mean, it's really a cattle herd situation. I do feel sorry for if that's what they have to work. That's what they have to work. But the um, the flip side of that is I do like the idea of just being able to gather. I'm trying to work in a team like we gather the company very much a few days of it work. I wish we could do that a little bit cards.
hmm With the time that we have left, I would really love to just hear what it's like being sort of a gringo in rural, high Amazon, rural Peru. What's kind of the vibe? You must be one of the only gringos in town. I think your bio says you're pretty fluent in Spanish now.
Yeah, I'd say it's not quite fluent, but more in between sufficient would be kind of where I'd characterize myself. So I can like start to tell stories, but jokes are still tough. And I think that's the demarcation of understand pick up other people's jokes.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, I call myself the Gringo, and I am the local DEI. It's is how I think of myself.
Token gringo.
Yeah, the token Gringo, and it really catches locals off guard because I'm just like, hey man, yo soy Gringo, and they just laugh because it's true, like people appreciate that. But what I've found living here is it's wonderful. Folks in the Americas are much more open, I would say, than Europe, just in terms of
Hmm.
emotional connection. And so I've appreciated that. I've also, because of my wife's work, there's a local community that we into, and so I think that's a pretty specific dynamic to replicate. But I find the food incredibly good and healthy. Peru is known for its cuisine. In fact, I think it was 2003. I don't know if they got it again last year, but 2003, the top Michelin star restaurant in Lima. The food quality here is really good. had to get used to the heat a bit. To that temperature ranges, can push upwards of degrees with high
Hmm.
heat. Um, but I don't know. You just get on like the city that I'm in. It's 200,000 people, so it's totally podunk at all. But it also feels like so. I'm loving it. Well, the best part for me living here is that I'm raising a family, an environment I understand. It feels like the 90s here.
Mm.
People aren't using their phones all that much. They do, they are on social media, but you don't see people do when I'm traveling. It feels much more connected. Yeah, I enjoy that.
I want to pick up on something you said, which is that it's you find it easy to make like more human connections, and I'm sure you've had many nights, 2 a.m. drinking cheap liquor with the locals, or some plastic chairs and stuff. But or maybe that's just me. But tell me what you mean by that. Like maybe you have some stories you could share.
Oh man, I so that was my trip traveling through Latin America, 2014 and 15. Had a lot of those days, but those raising a family have nearly the same. But what I
Sure.
feel like by open is like as compared to so the U.S. is quite open as well, but like Europe, like the way most people are there is the communities they grow up in or the communities they stay with their entire lives, so they're not really open to outsiders. Versus what I find in the Americas generally, and especially Latin America, is people are curious who you are and want to know more about you, and there's just a desire to connect. Um, that's nice because it means that you're instantly part of the community and familiar. And even though you're like me, I'm the gringo, right? Like people know who I am and can tell I'm part of the community. And I'm going around spending money at the little different stores and markets and stuff. And it makes me feel like I'm sort of safe and protected here and not just an outsider. Um,
Right.
and
Because they
yeah,
recognize you
it's
now.
nice. Yeah, they recognize me. I'm the gringo, right? So I'm very recognized. There's not too many 6'2" white dudes walking.
Right, right. And it's not like you only came for a week or something. Like you're in it.
Yeah, in the beginning it was like that. It was a little standoffish, like who's this guy, like but you show up day after day, and it's like, oh hey, people start waving, and smiling, and
Yeah,
especially
yeah,
having kids, like you know, their
yeah.
kids get excited about your people being people.
What's that like? Like going to the local little park or the church and everything, and kind of the interaction as a sort of with at the family level.
Well, so the community that we're part of through my wife's work means that there's other expats around, and that's nice. I think one of the things that I've had to realize living here is the education level is just lower. And so people's development of rationality and intellect, the way that I think of it as a Westerner, isn't the same. And being able to accommodate and appreciate that is part of the journey. You can't get just because you tell somebody something and they shake their head and you think they understand it and they go off and do different about instruction. Uh, that's part of the show here, and you either have to adapt to that or accept it and just work with it. But that's been one thing. But like family life has been wonderful. So especially my kids going to school, my first daughter, school, and the friends that she's developing there lead to friendships with the parents, and that's been a very cool set of connections developed through that. And then watching, your kids learn multiple languages, time and
Mm.
fluency. Like I go to town and I literally ask my daughter, like, "Hey, how do I say this? How do they say that?" And she becomes so that's wonderful. Birthday parties are totally different. There is a structure and a expectation, and boy, man, you better do. So that's something different coming
Tell me about that.
from
What?
that.
Yeah, could you go into detail about that? What's different about it?
Well, I won't say that it's everywhere in Peru like this, but at least here where I'm at, like the structure of a birthday party is that invite all the friends. So You have to have a cake, of course. You have to give out gifts to everybody that's in. So those things I think are kind of the same up until that point. But you always are going someplace where all the kids can play and have a good time. You also are a lot of times they will bring in an entertainer,
Mhm.
and you're serving food to all the guests that come. It's 3 to 4 hour affair, and there is a specific cadence of which event goes first, second, third, and fourth throughout that 3 to 4 hours. And so it's very much a communal event. Another is sort of thing that surprised me was the communal event of like the school itself. So it's a private school. Private schools aren't near as expensive in the U.S. from a
Mhm.
U.S. perspective, but the communal aspect is what surprised me. So just this last weekend, there was a school sports event, except for instead of it being the kids, it was all the parents playing each other, splitting up in teams, and all the kids were there to watch the parents play sport. So that was kind of cool, like indoor soccer and volleyball, right?
Mhm.
And all the kids in tow. So it's the way that they mix the generation, you know, people don't feel like, oh, you're old, you're young. It's like everybody's.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's a huge thing. Seeing multiple generations of families together, like eating ice cream, hanging. There's probably like a little town square with the church and like the
Mhm.
gazebo and all that type of stuff. And they're selling ice cream and popcorn and all that, and just seeing multiple generations.
Yeah, it feels a lot more natural, and people are happier and healthier. Just it's like, I mean, not it's not perfect. I'm not saying that, it's all rainbows and unicorns of that nature. It just feels a lot more organic.
What other like observations have you had, or things where you're like, wow, this would never happen this way in the US, good or bad?
Hmm. So they definitely employ a lot of police officers. They don't pay them, but so very secure, safe. Doesn't seem much live, but always we've noticed for the last 2 in a row, the cops line up at the plaza. Inexcusable, they will, but that's the sort of thing in the U.S. and shocked the man was given this really huge ticket and dramatic situation. The cop, but that that squishiness with the, I think something that's hard to, in the from a U.S. perspective, it's like in Western democracy perspective, it's like here's the rules, you stay in the lane, you follow the rules, all will be well. Versus in Latin America, it's like the rules are there, but they're kind of guidelines. Like, let's decide how we want to deal with it. So another one of those is like how people drive here. Like it
Mm.
feels very unsafe at first, and then you realize that there's actually a method to the chaos where it's more like, okay, we're all just water flowing down a river. So if there's space, you go there. Everybody's just got these social agreements. We're going to work together. And truthfully, I hear that there's accidents, and I've seen. I mean, lots of moto taxis. And you would think it would be highly dangerous. These guys wacky time. For years, I think I've seen 2 people, no serious injuries, but 2 people collide with each other. 4 years I've been here, and definitely,
Right.
yeah. For what it's worth, there is an element of personal accountability that chaotic environment. All the traffic's slower, and people are more aware, but it's also not completely for the faint of heart.
Yeah, it's more defensive driving, I guess.
That's right.
I wonder who adapted better, you or your wife, in the sense that in Portugal, you can like park on the sidewalk. You probably remember this. People just like park like two wheels on the sidewalk, two wheels on the road, and you could just park like that even overnight and not even get a ticket. It's pretty wild.
Yeah,
So even Portugal has some elements of these things that you see in Latin
yeah,
America a little bit. So maybe she was already a bit more accustomed, or maybe you were in a different way because it's like the Americas. Who do you think fared better?
yeah. So I would say she fared better because she had better Spanish starting out. But I think I fared in that way, being able to communicate, get on with people. But I think no, and then just coming from Portugal, Portugal is very laissez-faire about rules as well. It's kind
Hmm.
of like the approach is different though. It's kind of like the Portuguese will sit there and be like, "Okay, thanks, Mister Officer. I hear what you're saying. I hear that rule. Got it." Will be very shake your head yes, and the cop leaves, and they're doing right. Like that's kind of that's kind of the more the Portuguese way. Um, the 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 Latin American way is, I don't really care for that rule. So it's a bit different. But yeah, I think we both adapt well. I think that the best thing for me, it was probably hardest for her to adapt to, is just the openness of the general. Like after living in Portugal, I actually came to the definition of the world.
Hmm.
I think they still.
Let's make that our last little theme as we get to wrapping up. Tell me about this old world versus new world dynamic.
Yeah, so I do need to jump as well here, but I think of the old world. So it took me a while living in to realize this, but there's no wilderness. Right? There are pockets, but in general, there's no wilderness. There's so much expansive, untouched space. Versus in Europe, like everything's been shaped by human or another, and as a result, there's a sort of in the age and the way the power structures are, there's sort of a stagnation. There's not this dynamic ability, dynamism, feel, and that's what I attribute the difference. Is one is kind of stayed stuck, and there's a lot of fantastic, very amazing creature comforts about it, but it lacks the openness and the space that the wilderness brings, that comes with less defined powers.
And Saz Mining is on the new world of the financial system, right? Uh, and the power structures that are kind of being undone through the power of crypto and Bitcoin.
That's absolutely right, Vance. Yeah, it's fun to be on the frontier.
I agree with you. I agree. There's I don't know if you've seen the series, the Bolivar series on Netflix. It's actually quite good. I recommend it,
Hmm.
about Simon Bolivar, and it tells you kind of about the history of the how South America kind of got formed. And he was in Europe. He was like, in Paris at all the fancy dinners with like Napoleon and all this. And he's just like, I need to get back to the Americas where like I can actually like form the world like this. Like Europe is already built. There's nothing here for me. But in the Americas, like there's still there's still so much untapped wilderness and just opportunity to build.
That's right. Yeah. So maybe Simon Bolivar and myself have something in common, because I absolutely still to this day, and I know a couple hundred years ago when he.
100%. So we'll let you go. We'll do a quick outro. When we say bye, hold on for 2 seconds so we don't lose the audio. But why don't you take this time, Kent, to let people know where they can find you and any last message for the audience?
Yeah. So Kent Halliburton on Twitter at K Halliburton, the handle, and DMs are open. LinkedIn, Saz Mining, word, the website. Would love to speak with you. Been looking at starting to save in Bitcoin, considering that for the future. Please reach out.
Awesome. And there'll be a link in the description to the Saz Mining website or to Ken's Twitter, and you can start there and mention MyLatinLife so he knows where you came from, and that'll be good for everybody. Uh, but Ken, thank you for joining us. Really interesting story. What you got going on down there, and I think we'll try to include you in any future roundtable episodes we do, where we kind of get a couple of different people. Maybe we'll do like a Bitcoin roundtable or maybe a Peru roundtable, and we'll have you on for one of those.
Very cool. I appreciate that. It's been an honor and privilege to be here, Vance, and share with you.
Absolutely. So this has been another episode of the MyLatinLife podcast. Again, our guest today, Kent Halliburton, Saz Mining. That's S-A-Z Mining. Link in the description to check it out. And for the audience, please subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to this. YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all major podcast players. Subscribe, follow the podcast. We put out 2 episodes a week with amazing guests like Kent, and you won't want to miss an episode. Ciao for now.